Welcome back to our next edition of Talon Talk. We've got a very special guest into the studio today, but before we get to the interview, let's get to looking at the action around the athletic department this past week. Men's and women's basketball were both in action. The men's team went 1-1 on the week, defeating Southern Miss behind 15 three-pointers and a double-double from Carter Hendrickson for the team's first true road win of the year. UNF did fall on the road to a ranked Florida State team Tuesday night. They'll continue to be on the road at Syracuse December 21st. The women's team was also in Tallahassee, facing the Seminoles Wednesday night, falling to a top 10 team on the road. They'll finally come back home December 28th to take on Holy Cross. While not in competition right now, softball released its 2020 schedule featuring 51 games and 41 in the state of Florida. UNF will play 22 home games and 3 contests against Power 5 teams in Purdue, Virginia Tech, and Florida. The home opener is set for February 14th, which is also the home opener and season opener for the baseball team. Going around the Ospreys and the pros, Drew Weeks and Donnie DeWeese, former Osprey baseball greats, finished up their seasons in the Dominican Winter League with 27 games apiece between the two. So with that quick roundup, let's get into the interview today. We're hearing for the first time for many people the voice behind the mascot, Wyatt Helms, who was Ozzie for the past year and a half. Awesome to have you here, Wyatt.
So we've known you as Ozzie, and now you're the retired Ozzie. How does it feel to be back and getting your degree now?
I mean, it's honestly like I never left the University of North Florida campus. I know I went to Arizona for my wedding and all this other stuff and my internship. But coming back, it just feels like I just fit right back in. It's like I never left. Being Ozzie, I know everyone, so everyone's like, "Oh, hey, how are you today?" I'm like, I'm doing good. It's good to be back.
So when I got here, obviously, and you were already Ozzie, and so how did the backstory, what's the backstory look like for you becoming Ozzie?
So before I was Ozzie, I was another mascot at Chick-fil-A. There's a funny story with that. So I got fired by my uncle. He said,
"Your uncle worked at Chick-fil-A?"
No, he worked at he was lawn maintenance, and I worked for him when I was 16 because I wrecked my truck. But that's another story. And so I got fired. I worked at Vacation Bible School at church, and my Chick-fil-A boss, came up to me afterwards and was like, "Hey, how would you like to be my cow?" So I looked her in the face and I was like, "Excuse me, what are you saying to me? You calling me a cow over here?" She goes, "Sorry, I'm the marketing director at Chick-fil-A. How would you like to be the mascot?" I was like, "Oh, absolutely." So I did that for 6 years.
So that was a six years. So
yeah.
You started at what age?
I started at 16. All the way.
So you were doing. Oh yeah, that's right. You were doing it in college too.
Yeah, I was.
Which Chick-fil-A?
In Gainesville.
And
Shout
so
out Archer Road.
So does that mean you go to what do you do as a Chick-fil-A mascot?
So with the Chick-fil-A in Gainesville, we had a contract with the University of Florida. So we would go to baseball games, gymnastics, volleyball, and women's soccer. So we paid money to have a sponsorship package where we'd bring the cow out and we do halftime contest or in between things to do. So it was pretty fun and got me in with them. And if I went to the University of Florida, which I didn't, I would have been Albert the Gator, which would have been really cool. But I think Ozzie has fulfilled everything I've wanted and then some. It's been great.
Yeah, you've done a lot of things and have had a lot of fun doing that. And I know a lot of people have, punched you and put their hands on your head and giving you a run for your money, but you handled it well. Yeah. So you kind of were trained in being a mascot before you got here. And did you have, when you got to UNF, were you like, I'm going to be a mascot?
Yeah, so with that, I waited about a week just to try and catch my bearings here because it was a new campus. I was transferring, wanted to see how everything worked. And I knew in my head, I was like, I know we have a mascot. Who do I have to talk to? So I went to my academic advisor, and I was like, hey, I know we have a mascot. Who do I have to talk to? And he pointed me to the arena. He said, go to the arena, go to the athletic office. So I walk over to the arena that same day that I went in. I was like, I'm going to talk to whoever I need to be a mascot, be Ozzie. So I walk in there, and I was like, hey, I know we have a mascot. Who do I have to talk to? Who I want to be him? And the person walking out was the old marketing coordinator. And she was like, you actually need to talk to me. Let's go into my office real fast and have a sit-down talk. So me being at Chick-fil-A, I have videos from UF where I was doing mascot races and everything. So I walked into the office, and she's like, okay, what's your resume like? What have you done? She wasn't really interviewing me. She was just trying to see what I've done as far as experience goes. And I just went through the list of what all I did, and I showed her videos through it, and she's like, okay, when you get home or whenever you want, just send me over your resume and those videos you sent me, and we'll review you. So as soon as I walked back to my room, I was in the fountains at the time, I just went straight on my computer, sent him over my resume, and added the videos. And I got an email back that night, said, you're hired, we want you. So I started out as the secondary.
Okay.
And I worked my way up just by being myself. And
yeah. So how many years was it here then that you were the mascot? Because after what year did you transfer here?
I transferred here in 2019, so I've only been here for a year and a half.
Okay, so
technically 2.
Yeah, so it was a year and a half of being Ozzie.
Yeah.
Did you have to do any tryout then?
No,
because I know some
theoretically,
people have had,
I know we do have a tryout, but because of my previous work experience, they said, because she said I will probably set up a tryout for you, but when I sent over the videos and my promptness,
it
was enough to certify
this
me.
Guy's interested.
Yeah, he wants to do it, so let's see what he's got and give him a shot.
Is there an adjustment period of being a certain mascot?
When you go from one mascot to another, there is a transition period, yes. Because with the cow, there is no giant hula hoops inside, so to speak, so you don't have a fat belly. Shout out Ozzie's belly. But yeah, there's definitely an adjustment to get used to with how you move, how you walk, how you act a certain way, how you react to different situations. And for me, going from a corporate side of things to a collegiate, it was a whole new world. It was nice that I had collegiate background, that we had the contract with UF, so I knew sort of how to interact with fans, how to interact with crowds.
Yeah.
But if I was coming from, say, like the Florida Lottery mascot and traveling around doing that, but just doing only corporate events, I would only know how to react to a corporate event situation. I wouldn't know how to react to a fan situation. So luckily, if you've never had that, it's definitely a learning curve. And it's something that you need to learn on the fly, especially with little kids at fans, because those can be either a handful, crying, or they just love you and they're great. So
and you got to entertain, or
it's definitely, you have to entertain, and you have to be. If you can't be a good dancer, you have to be goofy.
Yeah.
If you're not good at dancing, you need to be goofy with your dances and own it. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
So you're harnessing the personality of your mascot.
Yeah. So whenever I'm training someone to be a mascot, what I usually tell them is just be yourself. Don't try to be anyone else, because the best way to be a mascot is to do what comes naturally. And if what's natural is being a goofball and dancing all the time, then that's what you need to do, because otherwise it's just going to be awkward and not look good on the court.
Yeah. So let's say, you live in Arizona now, but you're Ozzie. Theoretically, let's say you were Phoenix Coyote, you're doing that. Would he have a different person, would that be a different personality, or would you kind of mirror it the same way? Are there a few instances where the personality would be different for a college mascot?
Yeah, so a college mascot is kind of more goofy, kind of silly, whereas a professional mascot,
more corporate.
It's more corporate style. It's more set in stone. And usually if they have like a really good mascot before you, they'll try and want you to emulate that mascot instead of creating your own identity. So I know I was talking with Baxter, the Diamondbacks mascot, and he was telling me that he had a guy that he took over for, and what had happened was they wanted this identity this way, but he said, no, I'm keeping my identity how I want my mascot to be, and you're going to have to deal with it. And they love him because he was so stern about it and created Baxter to be himself, and he's been so good about it that he's been on for the past 5 years.
Yeah, if you think about professional mascots, I grew up in Chicago, and we had Benny the Bull, and he has a certain persona.
Yep.
And you play that persona out, and you end up being kind of a marketing tool, a PR tool within that organization. And then obviously marketing definitely did that with you. I mean, involved you in things, and you're an integral piece of a lot of events. And do you have some at UNF that you enjoy the most?
Events or like games?
Events or games, yeah.
So there's two things that stick out the most, games and events. I did an event when I was, it was spring semester last year. This guy hosted a party for his 2-year-old, and they had this giant bounce house. Probably the worst experience you can have as a mascot.
So you were in a bounce house.
I was in a bounce house as Ozzie. I slid into the bounce house and started bouncing with the kids. They were loving it. The parents were loving it. But when it was time for Ozzie to get out of the bounce house, I didn't think that through because my head's too big and my belly's too big to get through. I had to squish it to get out. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try doing something new, and I'm going to take a running start and try and slide out. And as soon as I jumped, my body hit the ground and my head flew right off. And one of the parents caught it, and I was like, "Give me that back!" And I like threw it right back on top because I was missing I had my head off for a little bit, and the kids were like, "What just happened?" They were like shocked, just looking around, and it was one of the worst things that you could have as a mascot. Luckily, most of the kids were turned around, and they were just like in shock to realize that Ozzie lost his head, and it was Wyatt just standing there in their driveway.
Is that a concern?
As me, it is a concern because I've been doing this for a long time, and that is not what you want to do.
Yeah.
But for games or other events that I did, one of my favorite basketball games was the last year when we were hosting the A-Sun. It was just so loud and oh my gosh, the atmosphere from the students, sorority life, literally all the fans here was just insane. And I was feeding off of that as a mascot because it's fun to entertain the crowd and it's fun to get a reaction out of people. When I'm here and there's hardly anyone in the stands and I interact with the same 5 people, it gets boring and it's not fun for me. Whereas when we had 5,000, 10,000 people in here just screaming their heads off, I can just be a goofball and have fun with it, and it's a lot of fun. And then at the end of the semester when cheer went to nationals, that was one of the cooler experiences I've had, is going to Daytona with cheer, competing at nationals with them, and just even though it was like a 5-second split of just me pumping up the crowd, so to speak, at a cheer event, it was really cool and interactive.
So when you have a big crowd, you're talking about that playoff game, do you have like restrictions on what you can do and where you can go and everything?
Yeah, so for me, I personally try to stay away from the upper levels because, one, there's more kids there and it's more of a liability for me to get trapped up there. And I don't want to restrict fan view from up there. For me, I like to stay on the court side as much as possible. Stay close to the cheerleaders. Stay in front of the band, especially here at the court. I would stay in a corner. And I wouldn't move much as far as fan interaction during the game. I would do it before the game or after the game. During game, I try to stay courtside by the cheerleaders or in that general area. And I like to interact with our fans that are sitting courtside because they enjoy it.
Do you have a go-to trick or move?
Go-to trick or move. When cheerleaders running their tumbles, I do a cartwheel every time. That's my favorite. But my go-to move, it's got to be the belly bust. You got to just throw it around.
You've done that. You've done that many times, and I think a lot of people can attest to seeing that.
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's fun.
So you're doing that, and sometimes you're outside, and it's in Florida, and it's hot, and compare, prepping for an outdoor day versus, you're coming to a basketball game or volleyball match or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you have to hydrate, or what do you do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what I would compare the suit to, just for people that don't know what it's like wearing a winter coat, like a full blown wool winter coat in the middle of the summer at all times. Like there's never a time where it's not like that, except for maybe when it's windy and you get a nice breeze through the mask. But I definitely hydrate. It's like I treat myself like I'm an actual athlete. So you would hydrate the day before, all day, drink water. I would eat pasta. I'd carb load. Mm-hmm. So, because if I'm not carb loading, I would fatigue by the start of the second half, and it would show. And you don't want to
disappear
and just completely fall as a mascot and fall of dehydration. So what I would actually attest and helpful is that I'm from Florida and I grew up in this and I played baseball in this, and it helped that I knew what I was getting myself into. And it helps that I was an athlete beforehand and not just some Joe Schmo off the streets that didn't know how to hydrate before a game or have to learn that on the fly. So being a mascot, you definitely need to hydrate and stay on top of your physical health for sure.
So going back to what we were talking about, you were talking to the I think it was Baxter. Do mascots kind of like have a similar personality, or they share tricks of the trade, or they kind of have different background? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, so a lot of some mascots are different, some are the same. Generally you'll see the type of mascot, like if they're a goofy type, like the Philly Fanatic or Orbit or the Chicago Bulls mascot, they have that goofy mentality. The person playing the character is generally like a similar personality to each and every single one. So they'll usually be the same size, same shape, same mentality, and they'll treat it the same. Whereas like you see your aggressive mascots, like Baxter's more of an aggressive one, more like in your face, kind of like a big guy, like a muscular. His mentality outside of it is very similar to that. He's like, I'm the best, I'm the top dog, I'm that. And it shows, but I would say that a lot of mascots, when they're talking to another one, they want to help someone out. Because I'm just trying to help you out be the best mascot you can be, especially if you're a young buck coming up through the streets, a young Oz coming through, coming to the nest.
Yeah. Young Oz and Harriet, right? Trying to figure out what to do.
Exactly. You got to help them out, because you don't want, if they're taking your place in the future, you don't want them to look silly or embarrass themselves, or because that's not only is it their brand, but it's the school's brand and identity. You don't want to get rid of that or change that up.
Did a lot of people at UNF know about you being a mascot, or was it kind of like over time, or like what was it like with that? Because I mean, you knew a lot of people that didn't know you, and same thing can be said for a lot of people that work in the athletic department.
I feel like a lot of the people that work close with the athletic department or have done things with us, they knew who I was. Students, if they were in the sport management program, they would know, because that's my program, and I've done events in classes as Ozzie with teachers, and I would be like, hey, is this okay? And I would have to let my teachers know that, hey, I'm going to be out of class because I have to go travel to cheer. I have to travel to a basketball game. I have to do this and that. I have an event off site. So I would tell them beforehand, like, hey, look, this. And so it'd be brought up in class, like, hey, go support them because Wyatt's the mascot, blah, blah, blah. So you'd see often where a lot of people would know me, but I would say most of the general population had no clue who the mascot was.
Did you like that?
Yeah. It's nice to walk around campus and be like, I saw you at basketball.
I saw you yesterday, but I was.
It's like, I saw you. You were funny yesterday, but you don't know me.
Yeah. So it's like actors preparing for something. Did it like change your personality at all?
I would say when I put the head on, I change. I go into what's natural to me. I don't have to cover it up. It's just like my inner self. So like my portrayal of Ozzie was how I am on the inside 24/7, just goofy, really energetic, really happy, and just loving it. Whereas I try to is the key word here. It doesn't work all that well, but I try to keep myself controlled and contained. It doesn't happen sometimes. I get my inner mascot every now and again.
So for people listening to this, you walked and got your degree, and you had the Ozzie mascot. You had Ozzie on your hat, and your graduation hat. It became part of your identity here at UNF. How much did it shape your memories here?
Pretty much all of my memories have been from Ozzie. I'm so thankful for my time here as Ozzie, because without Ozzie, I wouldn't have made my friends here in the athletic department. I wouldn't have cared much about UNF, especially athletics or anything, because I probably wouldn't have stayed connected. I probably wouldn't have had much of a school spirit identity, because like I grew up a Gator fan, and now I'm a UNF Ospreys fan because I was Ozzie the Osprey, and it really made me be a part of the school community, and it was great. So all of my memories I can credit to being Ozzie the Osprey.
Would you say that you perfected the swoop then, or did you have to perfect the swoop being an osprey?
Yeah. So the swoop at first, I was like, "What is this? What is this silly little thing that we do?" Like my first week, I was like, "What the heck is a swoop?" And they're like, "You have to do it." I was like, "Okay."
You got to be good at it now.
You gotta
Everybody,
be good
you're
at
the
it.
gold standard for swooping.
I am the gold standard. So you have to do the front leg kick and then the swoop at the end. But on free throws, I perfected. I mean, we shot a lot of free throws when I was doing basketball games, so it definitely came over time.
Do you have any last bird calls or cacaws or swoops to say, and any final words?
I mean, thanks to everyone here at UNF Athletics, and to Brock for supporting me here, and it was fun. So I'm kind of sad that I'm leaving, and hopefully I can come back in a few years, maybe get a big boy job here that isn't just mascotting. Who knows, maybe I'll put it back on.
Honorary inductee into the Hall of Fame is Ozzie.
Hey,
yeah.
Just put Ozzie's picture up there.
All right, so it's Wyatt Helms, the name behind the suit. Awesome to have you in and talking about being Ozzie.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Love to have it.
Well done, Wyatt. Well done on your degree as well. Thank you for coming into the studio today. Take a look at the action around the athletic department this week. It's another pretty quiet week with the men's and women's basketball teams still in action. The women's team comes back home finally after being on the road since November 9th. We'll take on Holy Cross December 28th and Edward Waters New Year's Eve. The men's team will go to Dayton December 30th, and after that, both the men's and women's teams will be back on the road to open ASUN play before coming back home and playing ASUN foes at home. So thanks again for listening to this edition of Talon Talk, edition number 14. Stay tuned for more. Swoop.